In this episode, my friend Mike Rivas and I sit down and we expand on our previous conversations from episodes 111 and 113. We had fun. Hope you enjoyed listening. Thank you. Welcome to the Banking with Life podcast. I'm your host, James Neathery. And look, I'm excited today because I have our friend Mike Rivas in here. He happened to be in North Texas, so he agreed to come up here and share his time. And very thankful for that and appreciative. And it's always good to see you, Mike. He's been on 1 and 2. There's a 2-part episode that he's been a guest on previously, and I highly encourage you to go watch that. But we're just going to kind of have a conversation, and you're invited to listen if you wish. And we're going to just update from then till now. All right.
Yeah, I've learned a bit since then. But one of the things that, the reason I brought this up in one of our conversations was after that aired, a few people contacted me, one through your office, and then other people just tracked me down somehow by my name and found my email, and I got a few emails.
Wow.
And I did meet with some of them either on the phone or a Zoom call, and they were asking me questions about stuff that I said, and I was like, I thought I was clear on that. So I went back and watched it, and I did exactly what I told you I was going to do. I was going to act like Doug from the movie Up, where I'm trying to make a point, then boom, I'm over here. I'm on this tangent. I'm that tangent. Sometimes I come back to the point. Sometimes I don't. And but it was because it was very unscripted, right? At first I prepared something, but then I just said, I just want to have a conversation because I'm talking about my journey. I wasn't trying to, present anything that from IBC. It was more about what I understood IBC. So I didn't really feel the need to prepare, but that also meant I was all over the place. So the message wasn't as clear as...
That's the way I speak. I'm all over the place.
Yeah.
I have a hard time remembering to come back and wrap up a point sometime, but maybe the listener can, listen to it more than one time, or maybe make a time stamp wherever we start.
Yeah, and there were like 3 things that kind of popped to the top of my head. Like one was... why did I do this, right? And it really came down to the difficulty of trying to achieve the American dream. The other thing is I kind of had an epiphany about becoming your own banker in IBC, and it was right after we did we recorded it. It aired a few months later, but right after we recorded our podcast, the very next podcast you had was the Halloween special with all your very interesting guests, right?
I did a lot of prep work in that one.
I enjoyed it. And I don't recall exactly what triggered me to have an epiphany about it, because I had mentioned, I'm not sure I'm doing it right. I'm not sure I know how to use it properly, but you said something in there that was like a light bulb moment, right? So that was something I wanted to share. I also wanted to clarify a little bit about what the spreadsheet actually does. When people ask me about it, it's like, no, that's just one part. Everything that, most of the questions I have is really done by the illustration software. And that is a component of my spreadsheet, but that's not why it's made.
Right.
If I need an illustration, I'll just ask for one, ask for an enforce, but that's not what it does. And so a lot of questions were based around that. And I said, no, that's not why I spent so much time on the spreadsheet. And so I just kind of want to clarify some of those things and explain it. And I saw your recent Q&A. And so for some of your guests who don't want to spend more than, 15 minutes or whatever the guy said, like, your videos are too long. I mean, I was.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So there's something on the internet called TLDR.
TLDR?
Too long, didn't read.
Oh, yeah.
It's basically you just summarize it, right? And so the points I was trying to make was that traditional vehicles to retirement are not reliable. We have to kind of unlearn what we were taught in order to look out for what's in our best interest. But that's very difficult to do.
Very. Actually, unlearning is more difficult than learning. Mm-hmm. Very often. Yeah,
you tend to have what they call confirmation bias and look for things that confirm your way of thinking rather than challenge your way of thinking. And that's just human nature. The other thing that I had to learn, you could say the hard way, is policy illustrations are not IBC. They're not the same thing, right? a 20-minute, what I call sales pitch with an illustration is not IBC.
It is not.
And I think that's what most of us are exposed to, because for whatever reason, these types of presentations of IBC are either funded better, have click funnels, whatever. That's most people's initial exposure to it, is that you're interchanging IBC and becoming your own banker with a policy. They're not interchangeable. They're not the same thing. And so that was one thing, I tried to talk about. And one of the things you've mentioned on several occasions is, the policy is not worth the paper it's printed on. The minute you hit print, it's already inaccurate. And I didn't quite understand why you said that. Like, why? Did dividends change that fast? I didn't understand. Right. But when I thought about it, and my personal experience, I knew that to be true because there are like 3 things that have to line up perfectly or have to be in a perfect world for that policy illustration to be correct. And they never are. Number one, you have to get basically the health rating that it says. We don't all get that rating. I personally did not. All of the policy illustrations I got, I was below that, right?
Let me, and I agree with you. The illustrations that you received in general, were they illustrated at standard or preferred, or do you recall?
Whatever the level is below the highest. So whatever the highest level is,
super
one level
preferred, generally. And rating, different companies have different ratings, right? But basically we have standard, and then preferred, super preferred. They can call it different things, top tier, ultra preferred. There's different language in the industry, and the reason I ask this is because that gives you the highest death benefit. It'll comparatively, it'll illustrate, higher cash values over time, and everybody wants to be preferred.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to be preferred. And I'm thankful that I can still get standard. So I'm going to keep buying until they say, no, James, you're uninsurable. Because the rating really doesn't matter if you understand the infinite banking concept. It is what it is. I'd rather know that I need to work on my health, right, as to not know and then never address it. Right. And what I mean by that, just by the mere fact that you're applying for life insurance, there's going to be some actuaries, some medical underwriters, tell you, it's like, yeah, you're standard. You're about like everybody else. Or, oh, you're preferred. You're, above average because you eat right and you exercise. Or you're all American. You're a little bit portly and you could stand to lose some weight. And if you don't do something about that, nothing's going to change.
Right.
But I don't want to... I'm coming back to my point that it's very common to see preferred illustrations when that's not what we typically are. If you're 20, 30, an athlete, maybe. But then you got to rerun the illustration. The advisor has to rerun the illustration. Then it's kind of a disappointment if you said, oh, you can get preferred. I mean, why go through all that?
Right.
Anyway, sorry. But.
Well, and I attribute that to trying to sell from the illustration. They're trying to earn your business through an illustration. And I was one of those people, right? I fell into that trap. So yeah, you got to have a good health rating. No guarantee you're going to get that, right? So that's one perfect assumption you have to make about the policy illustration. The second one is that the policy will perform as noted, right? That they will have that dividend. And most of them, the non-guaranteed, as you mentioned, is like the current experience, not an average or not a high, low, whatever. And so it's the best case scenario as of today. We're assuming today it's going to be just as good today, tomorrow. They don't know that, right?
Yeah, so as if nothing changes in the future.
Right.
They're not more profitable. The life insurance company is not more profitable or less profitable in the future. Their profits don't change.
Right.
Right. Well, we know that's not going to occur.
And then the third thing, which is the most important thing, which is why I created my spreadsheet, is your performance with the policy. Are you going to pay those dividend or those premiums? Max fund or whatever it's illustrated on time. You're not going to have a bad year where you can't make that payment. It's going to impact your dividend, right? And they don't show that. They show you the perfect illustration. They're trying to sell it from you, but that's not IBC. But even if you are one of those people, because I was, who buys into IBC because of an illustration, not because I understood the book, but because this looks good. Even if you are one of those people, I would strongly, highly recommend. Your partner, Mr. Griggs, recently put out a 7-part series on the what is it called, the whole life insurance mechanics from the perspective of becoming your own banker, not most cash value, not this, not that, just from the perspective of this is a tool or mechanism to implement these concepts. So what is the concept? What is the tenets of the book dictate or strongly recommend how you create this tool, right? And so it was eye-opening because I was unsure, and I mentioned in the last podcast, I was unsure about these numbers. Being a number guy, I wasn't 100% trusting these numbers. There was more to it, and that's why I engaged with you, and I had a certain comfort level that because you understand it so well that what you produce is going to be the best, in my best interest, the best for my situation. But I didn't realize how much risk, which is what I don't want in this. I've got risk in my 401k. I've got risk in my IRA. I've got risk all over the place. The one place I don't want risk, I didn't realize until I watched this 7-part series, how much risk and twisting and uncertainty you're introducing to a policy if you design it for the wrong thing. If you design it for maximum cash value instead of designing it to become your own banker, you're adding risk that you should. If I want risk, I'll go to Vegas, right? Much higher risk reward there.
Absolutely.
And I really enjoyed watching that, but it gave me an even stronger sense of I dodged the bullet. If all you see in IBC is the best policy illustration, you're heading down the wrong road. You might not end up where you think, and that was what this was to me. I've been down several roads where it was either a dead end or I didn't end up where I was in my 401k and other retirement vehicles. This was supposed to be, guaranteed destination. It may not be as lucrative or as fancy or as nice, but I want a guaranteed destination, and you take on way too much risk. And the other thing too that I don't know, that I'm sure if I'm trying to sell policies, I'm not going to make this apparent to someone, or I'm not going to draw attention to it. Like if you like trucks. If I'm trying to sell you a truck, I'm going to sell you on how much towing capacity, horsepower, size. I'm not going to tell you how much gas it burns, right? Because that's a negative, especially with prices. So I'm not going to dwell or highlight the negatives. But to me, when I think about thinking that a policy illustration is IBC, at the end of the day, IBC is not going to fail you. You are going to fail IBC. Either you're not disciplined, or you get sold on, a shiny policy or what have you, and so those risks aren't, clear. And so that's one of the things that I really appreciate, and I alluded to, but I didn't make it quite clear the last time I was here. Is, I said you were a terrible salesman. Because you weren't.
I relish that statement. Thank you for saying it. I was a little shocked, maybe a little hurt, but I love that.
The reason I said that is you weren't trying to sell me a policy. You weren't trying to dazzle me with an illustration, and that's the difference I appreciate between you and everyone else I ran to. Everyone else is trying to sell me an illustration with IBC, kind of scribbled over it, versus you're trying to help me become my own banker. That's the biggest difference. With you and your team, you're a guide for me to become my own banker. Everyone else is just trying to sell me a policy. And that's the weed eater. That story I told you, the video of This is Nelson Nash, around the 32-minute mark, he tells a story about logic. And the weed eater is the key component to that story. The illustration could be considered the weed eater. That little bit of information could lead you to make a completely bad call, even though you're logically looking at it. It's not enough information for you to make the right call on this. And so for the person that only wants 15 minutes, that's the gist of what I wanted to get across. There's more detail to it, but that's kind of...
Well, I love that. Thank you for the kind words. I greatly appreciate that. I mean, we write a tremendous amount of life insurance, and I'm appreciative and thankful. But it's the people that you get to work with, right? It's the people and the things that they do and the things that they don't know that they can do, and they understand and see that it's like, oh my gosh. I mean, that's life-changing for them, their families, as well as me. And it's exciting, and it's very common. You mentioned, not really sure how to use it or what to do. And, part of the reason I love history, but part of the reason I did the October, the Halloween special that you mentioned is it's a parody, right? And I believe that good comedy is based in truth. I'm not saying I was overly funny, but I did a parody on purpose. If you're going to bedazzle me with a great big exotic illustration and I don't know what's going on behind the numbers, and most people can't build this machine of truth that you have. I mean, they don't have your abilities to put that machine together, right? So, and not that they're not analytic, they could be very analytical. But you spent, a considerable amount of time getting illustrations from the internet or wherever they came from and entering this data into the machine that you built. And I love what you said too. It's what you do. You are going to have a greater bearing on the results of a life insurance policy than even the life insurance company. It's the action of the owner. Well, and it takes a process of time to figure that out or to see that, for that to become apparent for all of us. But if I'm going to make a decision based on a 30-second TikTok video or 1 minute, I don't know all the social media platforms out there. And I hear regularly that these are too long, and I get it. And I also understand that I speak slow. You can speed up the play, right? you can do it 1.5 or 2 times, and then you can stop it and pick it up later. I think it's worth doing that if you listen, especially to people like you and the previous guests. I think we mentioned Barry Dyke earlier, and then it is. And then Ryan Griggs's content, it's out there at no cost. Take the time to vet it, to see if it even makes sense or not. But to have a bedazzled illustration, if I'm just trying to go cash on cash in 1 year or year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, if I'm only focused on that, to make that happen, right, to massage that illustration software, to manipulate the software. And I'm not necessarily saying the manipulation in a bad, context. But what has to be done there, you're introducing fragility into that policy. And the more you do that, the more fragile it becomes. And the longer it's in existence, the more fragile it becomes. But it doesn't show that on the illustration, right? So if I see this great big, I'm all in on this idea and I'm focused on the numbers, you've already made a bad decision. And it's because you don't know what you don't know, right? And maybe whomever presented the illustration doesn't know what they don't know. Right. Maybe they don't know what happens in the future. Is it going to be tragic in every case? No, but you don't want to be the individual, talking about underwriting earlier, that, 59 years old and you're forced to enter into another policy because you can't pay enough premium because of the structure of the policy that you own forces you to reduce your premium. And if I choose to reduce my premium, it's one thing. But if I have the ability and the desire to pay a premium and you force me to reduce my premium, then you're forcing me to go back through underwriting at 59. Who wants to do that? And then going through the loss of liquidity in the early years all over. I mean, it's a very profitable place for the agent, the advisor, to continue buying policies. And I'm not even opposed to multiple policies. I'm just saying being forced to purchase another policy because of the incorrect structure of the policy that you own. That is why I get up and do these podcast. This is why I do what we do. So we can advance the idea that you can become your own banker, and putting free content out there where you're not forced into a funnel unaware,
And I think what you just talked about is another big differentiation between yourself and most other quote unquote IBC practitioners is with them, it's one way. And if you don't do it, there's something wrong with you. If you don't do an aggressive split, you're not doing it right. You've said there are other ways to do it, and there are cases where that makes sense, right? But the thing I really like is that, number one, it has to be this way and it can't be that way, or vice versa. But when someone does maybe go against your advice, you at least explain to them why. Like you said, if you're, if you have maybe a huge need for capital, like you're opening a new chain in your restaurant, yeah, maybe you do want as much cash on cash as possible. But like you said, if you're thinking long term, if I'm buying a policy thinking I'm going to fund it for 30 something years, then that doesn't work for you. But if you insist, you will explain to them clearly why, what the risks are, and if they're comfortable, so be it. So I like the fact that you're not totally against something. You understand there's a place for it, and even when you don't think, it's the right thing for someone, at least you'll convey to them why the risk is, and ultimately it's the person's decision to make. Yeah, so I that's something else I appreciate that you do. You're not absolutely not. I don't even want to talk about it kind of thing, because that's how some people are. If you don't do the way they do it and with the company they want to do it with, we don't. You don't really have any other options. Like, well, yes, I do. Right. Number one, I should have options with you, but I have options other than you. So I like that you give us the ability to make that decision, and you won't just shoot somebody down because I go back to our initial conversation. I came in from the totally wrong perspective, and we still ended up working together, right? It's like I had it all wrong. And through our conversations, I started to filter out the noise, clear up the fog, and I ended up where I think was the right place for me, right?
I agree.
The next guy that picked up the phone, maybe he had, it works better for him for an aggressive poly or a less aggressive policy, what have you. But you took the time to figure out what my needs were, and also help me talk through and understand that what I thought I wanted, or what I wanted, was not what I needed. Because if you peel back, well, you want this, why do you want it? And when I explained to you the whole purpose of me trying to get my financial house in order, I said, oh, okay, that's your goal. Right. And so we kind of refocused from what I wanted to what I needed to accomplish my true goal, not the front, not the one I thought I needed. So that was very, very different. Because like I said, most other people that I spoke with was just 20 minutes. How much, how long? I'll send you several illustrations, right? Because most of the agents I work with would present me with one company and either different products or different writers or whatever, different iterations of the same one, based on that 20-minute conversation. Did they ask anything about what I was trying to do with the policy? No. How much premium can you pay, and for how long? Good enough. I'll send you an illustration in 20 minutes. Yeah. That's how most of my conversations went.
Wow.
And so, taking a step back kind of to why I originally even got on this journey to IBC was the challenges I faced throughout my lifetime with what I thought I was supposed to do. My retirement accounts took hits in, 2000 with the .com bust, and then 2008 with the recession, and they're taking a hit right now. And so, but all of that was trying to achieve what I was taught, conditioned to be the American dream, right? Family, home, car, retirement, kind of thing like that. And you had a guest on recently, Damascene, that kind of, I mean, he exemplifies the American dream. And as I was watching it, part of it was inspirational, and surprisingly, the other part was like shameful. His story was inspirational. Where he had to start, the challenges, the obstacles, the setbacks he faced, but he succeeded.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's very inspirational.
Very inspirational. But the shameful part is, what's my problem? What's our problem?
Right?
Right. We didn't have to start in the hole that he did. You know, we're born in, you know, one of the best countries on the planet, and we have so much opportunity here. Yeah. Why can't we accomplish things that like Damascene did? But he touched on why. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he basically said the education system teaches us to be workers.
Yeah.
Right. And when I think about it, it's not just our education system, but society in general molds us into cogs for a machine. That machine is for the enrichment of somebody else, the machine owners, whether it's, you know, Wall Street investments or corporations, whatever.
All of them.
Yeah. We're a cog to drive this machine. So when do I get to be a cog in my own machine? When do I get to have my own machine full of cogs? It's like, here's Damascene with all the disadvantages, with all the obstacles. He's getting there, right? And why don't we do it? And I look back and think about like advertisement. How many times have you seen, your life will be much better if you have a new car, right? Your kids will be happier, your wife will be happier, your husband, whoever, new car. But don't get this new car the responsible way. Get into debt, right? Because right after they show you this beautiful car, they'll tell you, you know, the first 15 seconds of the commercial are the same. Beautiful car, beautiful Siri. Then the next one, depending on what interest rates are like, you know, rent or buy now, lease now, they give you the, you know, some terms and conditions that you can buy, you can enjoy it now and pay for it later. And
Sure.
that's how I was conditioned, right? I had credit card debt, all kinds of debt. And that kind of hurts, right? It makes it difficult to realize and create your machine to benefit you, you know, with either you as a cog or other cogs generating to the benefit of yourself. And even when you do it right, there are a lot of challenges. The biggest reason I started rethinking what am I going to do about retirement, right? Because the general way of doing things is you work until you retire. Some people, you work until you die, right? But you work until you retire. Retire with what? What am I supposed to do when I retire? How am I supposed to maintain myself, right? Oh, that's easy. Retirement plan, right? Okay, well, how is that working out for people? Majority of people, I forget the exact percentage, are forced to raid their retirement account before it's time. Medical emergency, whatever. Life happens. And you end up raiding it. Most people don't save enough in the first place. But let's say you avoid those pitfalls. You put enough away, you don't raid it. I had some numbers, you know, at the top of my head, but I wrote them down just so I had them right. About 61%, right? Majority, 61% of global stocks destroy wealth. Meaning 61 out of 100 companies, you're going to lose money. All right? That's scary. I don't have an even shot at this. I have less than an even shot at it, right? Studies have shown, like the numbers I have from 1994 to 2016, global stocks produced about an average 7.3%. If you remove just the top 10% of those stocks, that return goes down to 2.9.
Oh, and then that's still an average.
Right, still an average.
Let's look at the actual. Yeah.
If you remove the top 0.25%, the top 25% of these global stock, your return is a negative 5.2. So you got a tiny target, a tiny bullseye you got to hit. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Right?
While you're working, enjoying your family, traveling, doing whatever it is you like to do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead and try to hit that narrow bullseye,
right?
And hope that nothing changes. Yeah.
And another story from, like, was it 1990 to 2018? Only 1.3% of global stocks were responsible for producing any gain over a T-bill. That tiny fraction is what made up everything over a T-bill. Are you invested in that?
Right.
Does anyone know what it is after, before the fact? And so it's very, very difficult. Even if you do it the way you're supposed to, it's still uber challenging, right? And then one thing that they tell you is the safest way is to invest in index funds, right? Like the S&P 500. We touched on it before. You're picking 500 out of over 3,000 companies. What guarantee is it that those 500 ones are the right ones? And I thought that there was some algorithm, right? Some computer algorithm that says, oh, okay, this company for whatever metrics or KPIs is falling out of the index. We're going to replace it with that one. It's not. It's a committee. Stock pickers, right? Or investment people. How is that different than...
Yeah, the valuation of the company too that changes all the time.
yeah, and
in the industry, yeah,
and so those kinds of things made me think. All right, I got to use someone who knows. Like I can't. This is too important for me to do part time, and I've got to use a, investment advisor, financial advisor, whatever.
And all this is going on while we're aging, right? The older we get, the more we recognize and consider our mortality. Mm-hmm. The older we get, that time horizon, it adds pressure.
Right. And most of us are taught, trained, conditioned to trade our time for money.
Yeah. That's
our most valuable asset. There was a saying, if you don't make money while you're sleeping, you're going to die, working or something like that. But if you cannot figure out a way to stop exchanging your time for money, when are you ever going to be able to get out of that situation? When are you ever going to feel comfortable and secure? Because like Damascene alluded to, what if I get sick? What if I'm in a car accident? Then you're in trouble. And so there has to be another way to do it besides the way we're teaching everyone today, right? It's like there's only one formula, but it's clearly not working. So what are we supposed to do?
I just want... it's reassuring to know that cash values in a dividend-paying life insurance policy, properly structured for you individually, whomever you are, whatever it is you're doing, that makes sense for you, right? The cash values only go one way. Mm-hmm. Einbahnstrasse. It's a one-way street.
Yeah.
So this is Wednesday, right? Mm-hmm. They went up last night while I was sleeping. Mm. They're increasing as we talk today. When the markets were closed on Sunday, the cash values were going up on Saturday night.
Well, on the flip side, from last night to this morning, my 401k went down.
Cash values went up.
It's been going up for a while. Yeah.
Maybe, I'm just making a side comment. Mm-hmm. That's very reassuring that when you're not dependent upon something that has no guarantee. Yes, there's a history. I get it. And you can't control it. Where you look at the life insurance policy and it's going to go up anyway, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, forever, until we graduate, right? Because the life insurance policy matches your life. Okay. Well, then there's a death benefit, net death benefit. Even if I've, accessed a lot of the capital through loans or withdrawals, there's still going to be a net death benefit that passes to my people or whomever I love and care about. Maybe they're an entity. So there's an action beyond, our life expectancy is all I'm saying. But now, when you get to the point where you don't care what the market is or isn't, what the interest rates are or are not, I can't control them anyway.
Right.
And it's like, it's a different way of living. It's a different way of thinking, and I haven't in the medical profession, well, what's the number one cause of death? I don't know, or sickness, probably stress. Well, what's the number one cause of stress? Oh, money. It can literally become stress-free.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's a panacea to end all the be all, but we're talking about money, right? And it is dang near the end all be all.
Mm-hmm. And that's the key thing, right? Predictability. It's hard to predict the market. I think the term they use, it's impossible to time the market.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody can time the market. It used to be a bit easier back in the day. It's very difficult for financial advisors, active fund managers to outperform the market. One of the key reasons is it's a I don't know if it's called, the term is zero sum. For somebody to win, somebody has to lose.
It's a zero-sum game?
Zero-sum game. There you go. And it's not like you're pitting someone with a PhD against some guy that's flipping coins. No, they're all good. The competition is there. There's someone just as good as you, maybe even better, sitting on the other side of that stock transaction. You're selling it, he's buying it. Who's right? Like that's why it's so hard for individuals to outperform the market and indexes. And so the other problem is the problem you've mentioned with life insurance companies that they're experience. A financial advisor or fund manager, the financial person, whatever it may be, success actually works against them, because the more successful you are, the more people want to give you their money to take care of. It's harder to get those returns when the pool of money gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So you've got that working against yourself, and then you've got another guy across the table, just as good as you, trying to beat you. You're trying to beat each other. And that's why you see, people that have maybe a, multiple year track record suddenly fall off a cliff, right? Not sustainable. And despite indexes consistently outperforming any active fund manager, they're still not all that great. They still have their flaws.
Sure.
So even that safe, passive type of investment, there's no guarantees. I mean, that's all I have, and it's ugly. I don't even want to log in anymore.
That's not really funny, but that reminds me of back in the day of going through the 2008 and 9, the end of 2007, 2000, 2001. It got to the point where, you get your statements, your investment statements, and prior to these points in time that I just mentioned, it was always going up. So there's the expectation that the market's always going to go up. Mm-hmm. So you just throw the statements in your drawer. You don't even look at them. And, then comes along like 2000, 2001, things start going south. And you look at them and you get shocked a couple of times, and then you quit looking at them because you don't want to see how bad it is. Right. So that's exactly what you're saying. It's like, no, I don't want to look. And and you mentioned too earlier, I used to talk about that, where the timing, the market, there's a big, household name, investment house, and they all change their taglines regularly, right? And one of their older taglines used to be, it's not timing the market, it's time in the market. Mm-hmm. Well, how do you tell somebody that's 75 years old, losing 30 or 40% of their funds values, that, just you're in it for the long haul. It'll come back. Mm-hmm. Well, in whose lifetime? Theirs or the advisors? Mm-hmm. And then what is that worth? Watching your money going up and down, and we're trying to hit this small target that we're all, told that we can hit a 7% a 7% average rate of return, 12% long-term growth stock mutual fund. Well, and I get it. Markets were up, 25% last year. Maybe a really, edgy fund was up 50. Okay, well, what does it look like today? What's it going to look like when I decide to retire, which is still an unknown date, right? Mm-hmm. What's it going to be then? Right. I don't know, and you don't know either. Even with life insurance, I don't know. I don't know what the cash values are going to be when I decide to retire, because number one, I'm not going to retire. I'll graduate and I'll work until, I graduate. I may change the way I work. I don't even know that date. How could I possibly know what the cash values are? I just know they're going to be larger then than they are today.
Yeah, and you touched on what's, I think, should be, if not is, scary for a lot of us, at my age, is, what if I retire at the wrong time? What if I retired January this year? Damn, that would have sucked for me, right? If I were retired, January of 2020, when we had that huge dip, I would have been, oh my goodness. So Yeah, you're right. There's no guarantee. There's no predictability in that. And that's why I was thinking there's got to be a better way.
Yep.
Right. And after reading Becoming Your Own Banker, Building Your Warehouse of Wealth, and to a certain extent, Pirates of Manhattan, there is a better way. There's clearly a better way. It's been there. There's actually more than one better way than what we've been taught to do. And I mentioned it before on more than one occasion. I'm so thankful that I was able to get through the noise, lift the fog, and work with you and your team. I feel fortunate to have that opportunity because you're guiding me on that path to becoming my own banker. You didn't just sell me a policy, right? You're not a salesman. You're not just trying to sell policies. My interaction with you is I get the impression you want to be a guide for someone, your clients, to become their own bankers, and that is invaluable to me because I can't figure out a better way, right? The way I was taught, the way I've been doing for my career now 30 years. I think I've had a retirement plan for 27, 28 of those 30 years. It's nowhere near where it needs to be. I just keep seeing it, and then it takes a lot longer the drop is quick. Yeah. The getting back to even takes a long time, and then just when you get a little bit above even, you're feeling pretty good. It's like, there had to be a better way. But the second challenge was, am I doing it right? Once I figured out if that your team was the right team to go with, as I mentioned before, a policy is not IBC. It's one component. It's a key component, but understanding how to properly become your own banker. And I mentioned in the last podcast, what I do, because of the environment I program in, it's very different than computer programmers. I program an environment where the end result, no matter how many variables you stuff in there, no matter if you're adding 1 and 2, or you're doing some complicated proportional integral derivative control or calculus, at the end, it's either true, false. All of that stuff has to come out true, false in the environment I work in the industrial, what they call PLC, programmable logic controller. It's just a true, false machine. You can put a lot of complicated stuff in there, but at the end, it comes out true, false. And I mentioned in the last podcast is, how do I do that with infinite banking? How do I make a decision on, should I be doing this or should I not be doing it? How do I get all of this stuff down to true, false? It's like, how's that going to happen? And as I mentioned during your Halloween special, I don't know if it's something you said specifically, or maybe my mind drifted a little bit, but it like, I had a light bulb moment. And when I realized it, I had a second thought about something you said. You had mentioned before that Mr. Nash, that book, the concepts he's trying to teach you is so simple that sometimes it darn near insults your intelligence, right? And I had that moment because when I thought about it, the test that I'm been racking my brain how to figure out is the title of the book, Becoming Your Own Banker. If you put a question mark at the end of it, and everything that comes your way, you put it to that test, there you go. Should I be doing this? Is this helping me become my own banker? Yes, I'm going to do it. No, I'm not going to do it. Right? You got to get into that mentality. You guys have mentioned it before. You're taking over the banking function. Would a banker do that? Now, being able to answer the question to the test, that takes so much learning. It reminds me of Texas Hold'em. There's a saying with Texas Hold'em that it takes a minute to learn, a lifetime to master. Right. Mm-hmm. So now I did the minute thing. I learned that's the test. The title of the book is the test of things that come my way. Is this thing I'm thinking of doing helping me become my own banker? Yes or no? Now, being able to accurately answer that takes a lot of learning. right?
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, and so, that's one of the things I'm glad to be working with you, and even if we didn't talk, the fact that I have access to your videos and your podcasts, and same thing with Mr. Griggs, that I saw his 7-part series, learning a lot. I'm better prepared to answer that question. I can't answer it for everything that comes my way,
right.
But now at least I know the question to pose, and I have a pretty good idea of some things that were pretty obvious yes, no. Policy design. There were so many no's in the illustrations I got. Now, that was part of the difficulty of understanding IBC. Like, my understanding of IBC were bullet points in presentations, right? They were guaranteed growth, risk-free, tax-free, liquidity, easy access to money, right? That all sounds great. Guaranteed growth. Now, they didn't tell you have to have a big part in making that happen. I just thought you bought something, they hand you this machine that does all this. Like, no, it's not that easy.
Right.
But that's the way they try to sell it. This policy is that machine, and it's just going to do all these things. Like, no, it's not. There's some work on your part that you got to do to make it happen. There's some work on their part to make sure this machine doesn't fall apart. I when I was thinking about how some policies are designed, I love cars, and so I have seen people take I think it's like a 1.8 liter engine and crank out 1,000 horsepower. Now, that's great. Is that engine going to last?
No.
How many races are you going to have at that? Versus if you take like one of my favorite cars is the Corvette. And I don't know how many liters, but it comes off the line with like 400, 500 horsepower. Getting that thing up there to 1,000, yeah, you're going to tweak it, but not as much as this one. And that's kind of how I see what you refer to as Frankenstein policies. You've taken a tiny motor and souped it up so much that, yes, it's going to win races, maybe 3 of them, before it blows up.
I love that analogy.
Right? And listening to that 7-part series from Mr. Griggs, I think he had one where, like, after 12 years or something, it just breaks. Like, you can't even pay into it or things like that. Like, is that what you want? You want a 1,000 horsepower engine power coming out of a tiny little engine? The thing's going to blow up on you eventually. It's not going to last. And so that was something that, even though I didn't understand that at the time, I just knew that was kind of what you were trying to get across, is that you twist these things so much they might break. But now I understand, and so again, I'm glad I took a step back and stopped looking at the illustrations and making my decision based on which policy illustrated the most cash value, highest death benefit. I'm glad I didn't go down that route. I'm glad I didn't start my journey to becoming my own banker with that flawed thinking, because that would have gotten me in a lot of trouble. And now I understand why. I just had a sense and a feeling, and the flip side is, I knew you don't do those things. So you're not gonna hand me something that's gonna explode on me on my 3rd race, right? And so, but now I have a better understanding of why. And I reiterate what I said earlier. If people are just dead set on only seeing infinite banking through the lens of a policy illustration, do yourself a favor and watch that 7-part series. He explains in detail the risks you're taking by souping up a policy, juicing up policy so much with such a small base, like a small foundation. I think that's the example he used, is if you build a house on a foundation that's like 6 inches thick, it'll dry fast, it'll be ready to go. You can put something on there, right? Versus if you do one that's like 18, more expensive, more material, going to take longer to set. But let's say on a 6-inch foundation, you can put a 1-story house, 1,500 square feet. You want to put a 2-story, 3-story, 3,500 square foot house, you better have started with that 18-inch foundation.
You want it to last.
Right. And you want it to support
yes
the weight, in this case, the growth. Do yourself a favor. Even if you're going to take my opinion is the wrong approach to infinite banking through the lens of a policy illustration, at least do that. Understand the risk you're taking, because I didn't feel comfortable when more than one agent said, you don't have to worry about that. Like, I don't understand. The definition is here. It's in the illustration. It says, this is in my policy design. I don't quite understand what that means. And what does it mean that it is expected to, anticipated to? That's not a guarantee. That makes me uncomfortable. If this was some other thing that is kind of like a nice to have, it'll be great if it's there. Okay, I'll take a little risk, but not here. This isn't an arena where I want to have some risk. I have plenty of other investment vehicles where I'm taking on plenty of risk. But then again, one key difference between yourself and others is you understand that there may be somebody that likes to gamble, that has very specific needs, and maybe only needs to win two races. So yeah, let's pump this little engine up to 1,000 horsepower.
Right.
I only need to win 2 races. After that, I don't care. But someone like me, I think when we talked, I need to win 17 plus years of racing, right? You took my specific needs and designed a policy according to that.
So Mike and I go a little long on this conversation because it's so good. We're going to end it here, and we're going to pick it up on part 2. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for joining us on the Banking with Life podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and click on that little notification bell. Otherwise, join us on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher for weekly content.